Hello, my name is Dana Mannheim, and for my behavioral health theory project, I chose to evaluate fruit and vegetable consumption in low-income Hispanic children. To begin, I'd like to provide an overview of the population and the health issue that is being evaluated. Currently, around 20% of children in the United States are obese or overweight, and being either obese or overweight increases the risk for many chronic diseases, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and stroke. In fact, about 20% of the population of children are Mexican American, which results in the largest ethnicity amongst children who are overweight or obese. Delving in even further, low socioeconomic status and minority groups experience higher levels of obesity than non-Hispanic white children, and this is in large part due to the barriers of healthy eating. There are specific risk factors and protective factors within this population that contribute to overweight or obese children, more specifically within the consumption of fruits and vegetables. The risk factors include limited access to fruit and vegetables at home, lack of financial resources to purchase fruit and vegetables, the lack of knowledge about the benefits of eating fruit and vegetables, and the high cost, poor quality, and limited variety of fruit and vegetables, as well as the availability of the number of fast food restaurants, the community norms that tolerate poor eating, the poverty levels, and the lack of opportunity to exercise. Behavioral theory also helps to perpetuate the risk factors through evaluating subjective norms, attitude towards fruit and vegetable consumption, self-efficacy, and perceived barriers. Some of the protective factors include the strength and value placed within the Hispanic culture and community, which makes it a lot more likely to affect widespread change. The importance of social norms, particularly within peers and extended family, which again will make it more effective to induce change. And finally, the importance of food on the community. Coming together for meals is one major way that the Hispanic community bonds, so the importance in recognizing the need for food has already been determined. It is also important to evaluate the social determinants of health when examining fruit and vegetable consumption within this population. According to the WHO, these include neighborhood and environment, health and healthcare, economic stability, education, and social and community context. The environment can affect access to healthy foods because there's less accessibility to walking to get healthy foods. There's greater susceptibility to poor quality of air and water, and these all contribute to more of a sedentary lifestyle with fewer options for healthy food. There are also not a lot of community health clinics within these poorer urban areas, which can lead to a lack of education on preventative health care. Also, within traditional Hispanic countries, overweight children are perceived to be more healthy than children who are underweight or at average weight than in their traditional culture, which may affect how weight is perceived here in the United States. Family and peers are perhaps one of the most critical within this model because children learn by modeling parents' behaviors and their peers' behaviors. This is important for their social context, and at this population, they place a lot of priority on eating foods that are dense in high fats and lack fruit and vegetables. Education systems within this population also have less access to healthy foods in their schools, given the higher likelihood to rely on national school breakfast and lunch programs, where funding is often inconsistent and can include less healthy whole food options. Also, while the nutrition health curriculum is taught, it is found to be very limited. Within low socioeconomic areas, many of these families cannot find the financial means to purchase often expensive fruit and vegetables. Parents often work 2 or more jobs, which makes it difficult to find time to shop or prep healthy foods. It is also important to evaluate the ecological model when we examine fruit and vegetable consumptions within this population. At the individual level, a child's weight status is influenced by child factors including genetics, age, race, and gender, and parental characteristics including weight and education level. Again, family and peers are perhaps one of the most critical because children do learn by modeling parents and behaviors, and that determines their preferences. Within this population, parents tend to work longer hours, face higher unemployment rates, which invokes great stress, and typically they have lower incomes, which limit accessibility to healthy foods. Due to these circumstances, and since children rely on their parents as a primary source of food intake outside of school, they often consume fast foods and not enough fruit and vegetables. Changes within government and social policies could also help to promote healthy behavior. For example, it has been noted that when the government taxes unhealthy food options, there is often less distribution of the unhealthy food, and this can enhance healthy eating. Advertising also does tend to target African Americans and Mexican American populations, which does increase the likelihood for promoting poor food choices. So why is this important? It is imperative to evaluate this issue now because reversing the obesity epidemic requires a comprehensive and coordinated approach that uses policy and environmental change to transform the overall health behavior change within the community and to promote the healthy lifestyle. It will take time to enact all these kinds of policy changes in conjunction with behavior and environmental changes, and the problem will continue to get more severe unless we begin to reverse the effects soon. The childhood obesity is increasing in all ethnic groups, and its prevalence is much higher in non-white populations. To evaluate this further, the differences lie in multiple realms, not just one, including genetics, physiology, culture, socioeconomic status, environment, and all the interactions between these variables. When evaluating interventions, it is important to understand the interactions amongst these variables and the influences on the patterns of eating that lead to obesity. It is critical in developing public health policies to prevent childhood obesity through the consumption of fruit and vegetables. Throughout weeks 1 through 5 of the project, I evaluated multiple types of interventions through the lens of behavior theory. The types of interventions that are reported for evaluating fruit and vegetable consumptions in this population include nutrition education programs, gardening interventions, surveys and questionnaires, obesity screening and counseling tools, online personal assessments, evaluating national campaigns, including the 5-a-day fruit and vegetable campaign, school cafeteria-based interventions, and qualitative study and meta-analyses through specific programs. These interventions are all designed around a specific group of Hispanic children living in low-income economic urban areas and are centralized around a specific health behavior theory. The most prevalent intervention types found were surveys, qualitative studies and meta-analyses, and personal assessments. Behavioral theories were used within these interventions. For example, within surveys and questionnaires, the researchers designed questions specifically adopting certain constructs of the behavior theories being evaluated and were implanted in the questions within the specific child population being evaluated. Within the specified interventions, including the gardening intervention, the school cafeteria intervention, and the nutrition health education program, the researchers each created a specific design around the behavior theory or constructs being targeted, and then have collected the data and evaluated the hypothesis. For example, in the cafeteria intervention, the researchers sought to understand perceived behavioral control construct in designing a cafeteria that induced choice of fruit and vegetables to increase fruit and vegetable consumption. The design was evaluated in pre- and post-intervention phase, and it was concluded that perceived behavioral control was a strong correlation to increased fruit and vegetable consumptions. Other successful theories include social cognitive theory, ecological models, and value expectancy theory, and these all equated to a higher consumption of fruit and vegetables. After evaluating the effects of fear stimuli and perceived threat within risk and protective factors and through the health interventions, it was concluded that fear-based models and the associated theories were not effective to increase fruit and vegetable consumption due to the lack of long-term effects, the variety of moderators that were present, and the overall lack of research. The design-based interventions that targeted a very specific population and the theory were most successful in evaluating fruit and vegetable consumption, followed by surveys and questionnaire-based interventions. This is because the population being evaluated was not too far-reaching and was able to enact immediate change with sustainable results, whereas the survey-based approach presented more limitations and weaker correlations. There are many important theories and constructs applied from our class that were successful to increase fruit and vegetable consumptions, the strongest of which include subjective norms, streams of influence, perceived barriers, stages of change model, and micro and macroeconomic environments. However, the most important and most effective was social cognitive theory. This is because these studies were the most effective in demonstrating the concept of reciprocal determinism, the central concept of social cognitive theory, and that the interactions of the person, environment, and behavior all worked in conjunction with one another and resulted in greater fruit and vegetable consumption. Also, the risk and protective factors within this population were perpetuated by this model and its constructs, and it was found in that all interventions that increased greater fruit and vegetable consumption. Self-efficacy, reciprocal determinism, and social support from peers were also very important constructs within this model that increased greater fruit and vegetable consumption. There are many important theories, and like I said, the most important would be social cognitive theory. The intervention I would propose combined a lot of different approaches I evaluated in the social cognitive theory interventions. In combining all of them, I came up with the intervention called Fruit and Veggie Journaling for Health, or J4H intervention for short. This proposed intervention would take place over a 6-week period and would plan to target 3 different classes of predominantly Hispanic 5th grade students, and allowed students to create an online journal that would track fruit and vegetables they ate for dinner, breakfast, and lunch. The journal entries would include many different concepts from SCT that would be interwoven to the entries, including the motivation to eat the fruit and vegetable, the knowledge about the fruit and vegetable, self-efficacy, and preference rated on a Likert scale. There will be preset weekly goals to consume 5 fruit and vegetables daily that would be determined at the beginning of the program, and the children would be rewarded based on 2 different things: the maximum consumption of fruit and vegetables, which would be 5 a day, or creativity in coming up with recipes to give to their parents. At the end of the 6-week period, we would determine the efficacy of this intervention against the control group. This campaign would employ specific behavior theory from social cognitive theory, and those would include constructs from the pre and post intervention survey in each journal entry, as previously discussed, including knowledge, motivation, self-efficacy, and preference. Within self-efficacy, it would be important to determine the child's confidence in his or her ability to take action of eating fruits and vegetables on his or her own. And by taking on these small steps, it would endure long-term success determined at the beginning of each week with targeted goals. There would also be crossword searches, word searches, and picture searches that would induce behavioral capacity in a fun and engaging way, and that would occur at the beginning of every week. This would create long-term education and knowledge about why we should eat fruit and vegetables. And finally, there would be specific rewards gained through peer observational learning and parent observational learning, and positive reinforcement based on the success of eating fruits and vegetables daily and the creativity of the recipes with the parents. There are some potential ethical concerns that would be associated with this study. It may be hard to enact this kind of policy change on such a large scale, and dictating what children eat can be seen as unethical because it does take away from their liberty of choice. However, it has been noted that the positive effects of this program would be enough to outweigh the ethical concerns. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation. If you guys do have any follow-up questions for me, please feel free to shoot me an email or follow up via the forum. Thanks so much, guys.